I'm Steve Bancroft and with the Boo Club.
Pay It Forward Sports presents the premier men's hockey tournament of the year, the second annual Kings of 4-on-4 Provincial Championships. Join us April 14th to 16th in Ottawa and April 21st to 23rd in Toronto to win the best prizes anywhere in Canada. The winning team wins a trip to beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. Other prizes being given away include a trip for two to the Dominican, a second Las Vegas trip for team captains, team trips to NHL games, and so much more. Help support underprivileged kids and become the Pay It Forward Sports Provincial Champions and the Kings of 4-on-4. For more information on how to register, visit payitforwardsports.ca.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Battle of Ontario Hockey Podcast, the Boo Club on the Pay It Forward Sports Network. I'm Broeky, Jeff Brokema, and that is Brendan, or Brenda, Brendan Fleming, Flemsky, Flemmer, Flem, whatever else you want me to call you, buddy. Welcome back, guys. We got a special episode today, actually. That was an inside joke with all the names there. Fleming and I were talking before. But anyways, so we got an awesome episode here for you today, guys. Steve Bancroft, 16 years pro, first rounder to the NHL, ex Trenton Bobcat Junior A shout out, and ex Belleville Bull back in the late 80s, early 90s. This guy had a lot of fun stories, and back when hockey was a tough man sport, it's not near as tough as it was back then. So stay tuned in about 5 or 10 minutes here, guys, and we're going to break to Steve. We've got a couple of things we want to chat about before. Fleming, how are you, buddy?
Well, I'm doing good, buddy. Just coming off All-Star weekend here. I don't know what your thoughts about it. I'm sure we'll touch on it, but
want to touch on it real quick right now while we're talking about it, because it's like
sure, yeah. Well, yeah. I don't have too much to say about it. I mean, I tried to watch the skills competition. I'll be honest with you, Broeky, and I made it like 10 minutes before I was at my phone, looking at Facebook, looking at Instagram, and like I don't know. It didn't keep me entertained, and I have some ideas on how I would like to see it change. But I mean, there's almost like a WWE wrestling show to me. Like you could tell the results were predetermined. Like they had everything sketched out. Like I don't know, just didn't feel genuine to me. It's not WWE, so I mean, I don't know it didn't hit the number for me, that's for sure. But it is what it is. It's an event for kids. It's an event for sponsors, right? It's not tailored to hardcore hockey fans, kind of thing.
You made 10 minutes. I don't even know if I made 5. You know what? I'm all up for honestly, like us being wrestling fans, and we know like the charismatic side of things, and you want to have some fun with it, and like the little Mitch Marner thing where he's on a beach. Okay, I get it. He comes in a white suit. I get it. Cool. He goes and talks to PK, which is my buddy had a chirp for PK. He's like, "What do you do? Get a job at A&W?" I died laughing because he was wearing like orange, like the guy in A&W. Anyways, yeah. I just thought it was funny. But and then he goes down and literally shoots a shot like we shot in novice. Like if you're gonna do that whole thing, like the whole, whatever you want to call it, cinematic. That was the word I was looking for. You're gonna do the whole cinematic thing. I like it. Whatever you want to do it. It's fun. It's the All-Star game. Go down and try and score. Like at least put some effort in. He flicks it and then acts like, "Oh my God, what a save!" Like it's like they went from like one, maybe two, or a couple, cinematic or cool things to each All-Star game. Now it's like there's 2 or 3 things each event. It's just gotten so bloody horrible. Like I don't know. There was not one hockey person that I talked to that was like, that was kind of cool. It was like, this is a joke, and it's like, what they're doing is they're literally pushing away all the hockey fans to try and get more hockey fans. What's going to happen is they're not going to hook in enough non-hockey fans. Sorry, they're not going to hook in enough, and they're going to start pissing all the hockey fans off. And a number to go on with that is the number that I saw recently was hockey is down. The following or the viewership in the States. I don't know about Canada, but in the States, 22% from last year. Isn't that insane? That's an insane number. It's almost a quarter. So I think part of the reason is they're trying to get too gimmicky, and obviously there's I think viewing things for that as well. Blackouts. Everyone's talking about blackouts, but it's the All-Star game. I watched a little bit of the 3-on-3. The 3-on-3, what it is. Guys are trying here and there. It's not much to it, but at least it's a little bit more entertaining for me than the skills. I feel like the skills you can make it unreal. I feel like you could actually do something really cool with it. Like you said, you probably have some ideas. We haven't talked about this, but I feel like you could really do a lot with it. And it's like, man, like at least try like these 2-on-0s. Like, what the hell is that? Or like the one guy, I didn't watch much. I only saw a little bit, but the one I saw, the goalie stops a rim behind the net and then shoots it. And then the other goalie gets a 2-on-0 against them or something like that. And it's like the softest rim in the world. Like, what is the point of that? Like, put it off the glass or something. Make it interesting.
Yeah.
Like, let's make it like American Gladiator style with like do something to make it fun. Anyways.
They got to put some money on the line or something like that. Like if you win fastest skater, hardest shot, you should get like $1 million or something like that. Like you can tell guys are just coasting up there. I want guys to go there and want it. Maybe they should hook escrow into it or something like that. Like, if you score, if your team scores 10 or more goals in the All-Star game, escrow goes down percentage. Give the players some money, make them interested again. Look, money makes the world go round. NHL's trying to make money at this event. It's it's not doing the trick. You can tell the players aren't invested, especially in the 3-on-3. But I mean, hey, get them invested. Give them some more money. Throw $100K down per event, a couple $100K down per event. They got to do something to spice it up. For me personally, it's coming to Toronto next year, and we'll see how that goes. I know they can't do the same thing they did in Florida and Toronto. Like I don't think the fans would accept them going out and like doing that like surfboard game where like it's outside of the rink and like they just put on like the jumbotron for you to watch. Like I think people would revolt in Toronto if they did that. Like it's a weird thing.
Well, they did it in Las Vegas. Was it last year? Was it in Vegas last year? I think it was last year. Or the year before, whatever
Vegas
it was.
Way cooler though. Way cooler.
It was cooler, but they did something similar too, right?
I think the surfboard thing would have been cool if like they just would have had guys go at the same time. Like I don't know why you had one guy go and then like knock the guy in. Like you should have had two shooters just going at the board at the same time. Like make it interesting. I thought that would have made it way better personally.
I also think like you could do the fastest skater. Obviously, you could still do the time thing, but what about two guys going at once? Not the same area, but like how they're like crossing like this. I don't know if you guys can see it. They come. They don't cross each other. So like one starts this side, one starts down here, and then they go. Right, but it's still be cool to have it at once, and then okay, this guy's got to beat that guy to move on, kind of thing.
Yeah,
maybe get
cool,
12 of them.
yeah.
Just make it different. The other thing with the money thing, it seems like every time they put money in, it's like there's pressure on the players, and like a lot of time it just gets donated. So does it really do its cause? Like I understand donating, we're all for that, not against that. What I'm saying is like, is it really going to motivate the players? I don't know. You know what I mean? Where like a lot of times they'll win the car, they donate the car to somebody else, right? Like but a lot of it, like most of them. Is there a player that in the All-Star game that's not making millions? Like, really? I mean, they might make it to a fourth liner, but
I think some of the rookies coming on an entry-level deal are probably. I bet you a bunch of guys are making under $2 million kind of thing. And you got to think,
but
like,
they're going to be signing big contracts, though.
But after taxes and escrow, these guys aren't making tons of money. Like, let's say you play in Toronto, taxes are 50% here, but if you're making $5 million, cut that to 2.5 right away. Take another 6% for escrow. Like, you're down. Like, you're almost $2 million. Like, you're not making what you think you're making. So, I mean. If you threw $100K in there, that's like 5% of that guy's salary for the year. I'm sure he'd go hard. Some of them would. Some of them would. I
don't know. I'll take $2 million for him. I don't know what they're paying you at your job right now, but mine doesn't pay me $2 million.
My pay for sports tech didn't clear last week, so.
So I mean, the All-Star game is what it is. I know there's not much to talk about. We got to move on from here, but hopefully next year it's better. Yeah. We do have some big news I want to drop here, guys. So we launched our 4-on-4 provincial championships a few weeks ago, and we've had a lot of requests since we've launched that, and even throughout the winter and fall about where's your guys' hockey tournaments? We want to have a local tournament. Like we're looking for local tournaments, blah, blah, blah. A lot of teams because we've ran a lot of local hockey tournaments. And actually that's where we started a few years ago in March. But anyways, so we have decided to make some provisions with our 4-on-4 provincial championship. Basically what we're doing is we're going to move the Toronto tournament to Quinte West, which is our area, which is the Belleville, Trenton, that whole area. So it's now going to be in Quinte West. So it's one tournament, two main cities. The first main city is Ottawa, as you guys know. We already have a bunch of teams signed up there. And now Quinte West, this is being dropped right now. Nobody knows about this. So if you're from the Belleville, Trenton, Napanee, Brighton, Marma, Madoc, this whole area, guys, most of our area that listens to us, 4-on-4 provincial championships. We actually did run this last year in Marma and Madoc. And we're doing it again, but it's going to be even bigger. Like we said, we have the Ottawa one and now Quinte West. And what's going to happen is the winner from each tournament now will face off each other on probably the week after, at a later date. become provincial champions, and that team will win a trip for the entire team, up to 13 players. That includes 12 and a goalie, to beautiful, fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, a team trip. How amazing would that be? But we also have a pile of other prizes. We have a secondary prize to Las Vegas for 2. We have another prize for Dominican Republic for 2. $500 in cash. Also, team captain. So if you put a team in either of these tournaments, either of those locations, if you're the captain of your team, you have a chance to win a trip for 2 to Las Vegas. The only people that can enter those are team captains. They're the only people. So for that Las Vegas one. And also whoever finishes second place. So let's say you get first in Ottawa or first in Quinte West. Those teams play each other. The team overall will get to Las Vegas. The second runner-up team, so as long as you won one of your tournaments, will win team tickets, a team event to either the Blue Jays game or the Ottawa Center. So how cool is that, guys? We've got and there's probably going to be more prizes. We're working on hopefully having some bars, a ton of fun. So, you got anything to say to that, Flum?
No, just the biggest and best tournament in Ontario, coming back to the Quinte area. Like we said, we're going out to Quinte West. We had 16 teams last year, and I think we got at least 12 coming back this year. Who knows, we might get over 16, but just like Broeky said, we had some requests. Guys didn't want to travel, so we made the amendment to come back to Quinte West. What are we doing here, Broeky? I think it's April. What date are we on, Broeky? April 14th, 15th, and 16th. Biggest tournament in the area. Win a trip to Vegas, baby. It's gonna be a blast. And one last thing, Jeff, here before we get to Steve Bancroft, we have 2 bus trips coming up for Leafs versus Senators games here. First trip. In Ottawa, Leafs traveling to the Senators March 18th, and then the next game is April 1st. Both Saturday nights. Come join Pay It Forward Sports and Live for Today Travel on an amazing bus trip to see the Toronto Maple Leafs take down the Ottawa Senators and knock those Senators out of playoff contention. I'm telling you, Broeky, I think the Sens are going to stay in it, and I bet you by April 1st, that'll be the day the Sens are officially eliminated. Toronto win that night. I'll say 6-3, buddy.
That could be a rough little go. It could be really good for me as a Senators fan, or it could be really bad because, imagine Toronto knocks Senators out of official. I'm just never going to hear the end of it. I know how these bus trips work. They're always a ton of fun, but it's always a lot of fun chirps. And, usually you have some grumpy Senators fans or Leafs fans on the way home, but we all have a good kick of it. Did want to say one thing. I just wanted to say thank you for the $40 e-transfer. We bet the other week. I took Boston against Toronto, and I took Ottawa against Montreal, and both won. Touching, $20 a game. Thank you, Fleming. Thanks for coming out. I'm going to the Sens game against Edmonton on Saturday. Should we bet another $20? You want to win some money? Or?
Yeah, I'll take that. $20. Go ahead.
And Toronto, who's Toronto play? Should we do another bet for Toronto? Just thought we'd have some fun.
I have no idea who they're playing, but yeah, I'll do the bet. I don't know who they're playing, but
Fleming.
Who they're playing.
Toronto plays Columbus. Yeah, I'm not taking that bet. Sorry, buddy. No way.
No, Matthews, the Leafs. That's a game the Leafs are going to lose for sure.
And they play Columbus Saturday. So Toronto plays. Oh,
yeah, back-to-backs or something, right?
Toronto plays Columbus, but it's not. Yeah, Friday and Saturday. Sorry, guys. It's in Columbus Friday, and then so that's got to be 2 wins. Like Columbus is horrible. Toronto play. They don't play before then, eh? No, they don't.
No.
Okay, we'll come back to the Toronto bet. We'll take the Ottawa, though. I got Ottawa $20 against McDavid. You're going to give me 4-1 odds.
Never. We're already locked in at 1-1, bud.
Go Bobcats, go. I got a Bobcats hat on. I know a different logo than when Steve played for the Trenton Bobcats. But anyways, we've got Steve here. Awesome stories, guys. Have a listen. You got to hear the one story. I think he talks about there being 3-line brawls in a row. So like 3 lines. So that's like 15 players, something along those lines, guys. And there's plenty more. 16 seasons. I don't know how many hockey teams he played in almost every state, it seemed like, and played in the NHL as well. So definitely a great listen, guys, and a great guy for the Quinte community. So, ladies and gentlemen, none other than Steve Bancroft. To all the Boo Club members, this guy started off his career playing for the Trenton Junior B Bobcats as a 15-year-old, and then he played 3 years for your favorite Belleville Bulls. He was drafted in the first round along with 3 other teammates, all in the first round, all to the Toronto Maple Leafs. He played in the National Hockey League for the Chicago Blackhawks and San Jose Sharks, including 16 years professionally, many of which in the IHL and AHL. This guy got to play with many and against many hockey legends from the 90s and early 2000s. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Bancroft.
How you doing, guys? Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're doing great. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Not a problem. See if I can remember some things for you guys.
Yeah, we're going back. Like I said to talk to you before, we haven't had anybody this far back with the Bulls, so it's kind of interesting. And I actually called one of your teammates today who I know a little bit to see if I could dig up any stories, and I got maybe one or two, but we'll talk about them in a bit. So maybe you could just tell us a bit about, growing up playing hockey, and then obviously, like we said in the intro, you got to play with the Junior B Bobcats. When I was looking at the numbers, I think it was as a 15-year-old, wasn't it?
Yeah, back then it was a little bit different. They didn't have AAA or anything, so I played in Madoc as played center, and then when I went to Trenton as a 15-year-old, I started playing D. Just never played D before, but whoever switched me over, Frank Pinder, rest in peace. The guy from Sterling, he was the coach. Unfortunately we were very bad. I think we won one game at Christmas, and I ended up going back to Madoc and playing Bantam again. So the next year, as a 16-year-old, I went back again, and same thing. We had a crap team. We had one win at Christmas. After Christmas, I ended up going up to St. Catharines Falcons in the GOJHL, and I went from I think I played 8 games there, regular season plus playoffs, but I went from being ranked in the 8th round of the OHL draft to being ranked in the 1st round. So it was worth my while going up there.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I didn't realize that Trenton wasn't very good back then, because I know.
Oh, they were terrible, absolutely terrible.
Well, one win before Christmas isn't 2
years in a row, yeah.
Yeah, that's the Go JHL. I know. I don't know what it was like then, but I know now they still get quite a bit of fans and whatnot. It seems to be a pretty good league.
Oh yeah. Well, I say again, back then you were getting drafted out of junior, not out of AAA. So our team, I think we had one first rounder who was 3rd overall. His name was Jason Winch, and then we had 3 second rounders on our team. Paul Louse, tough guy, played in the NHL for a long time. Another guy, Jim Solly. So we had 3 second rounders and a first rounder just on our junior B team.
So is that how that worked then? Like, because now you get drafted when you're 15, right? So
yeah.
The OHL back then, like there wasn't many 16-year-olds in the OHL kind of
Well,
thing,
it was a little bit different back then. It was a year older, but if you were getting drafted as a 15-year-old going into as a 16-year-old, you had to be drafted in the first 3 rounds. So say Scott Thornton got drafted the same year as I did. He was a year younger, so he would have had to go in the first 3 rounds. He went 4th overall, I think it was, so it wasn't a problem, but that's how they did it back then. I really think that that's the way it should be now, because not all these kids are ready to be drafted at 15. They're just not ready. So give the kids an extra year to mature, and you'd be surprised what happens when kids that haven't hit puberty at 14 and 15 get an extra year. You'd be surprised how the stock goes up.
Well, that's crazy. I didn't realize it was like that. And I want to kind of look into that a bit. Now, recently, I think probably within the last 5 or 6 years, they added in the major midget draft, is it? So you can get drafted now as a 16-year-old, which maybe that's one of the reasons, like you said, guys develop later that maybe wouldn't have got drafted. But I guess the guys that went as a 15-year-old are pretty much going to play, right? As a,
that's what they figured. If they're going to be one of the top players, then they had to be in the first 3 rounds. Well, the top players are going to be in the first 3 rounds anyways, and then give those kids an extra year to develop. Which, like I say, I think it should go back to that, but who am I?
Yeah, no, for sure. And then what was your thoughts on Belleville and going there and obviously you got to play 3 years there and getting drafted to the NHL from them?
Well, actually, when I was getting drafted, I think I was ranked 10th or something. I went to the OHL draft with a cast from my ankle right up to my hip. Yeah, playing some spring hockey and still lots of scouts going to these tournaments and a lot different back then, but I blew my knee out. So it just happened. I fell into the second round and Belleville was there. Actually, I never even talked to Belleville before the draft, so it was a total surprise. And And but getting drafted so close to home, I grew up watching the Bulls. My dad used to take me to the Bulls games, so pretty big thrill to be that close to home. And there's lots of people from Madoc that came to a lot of those games over the years.
Now, for some guys, like I've seen, I'm not going to name any names, but I know some guys that got drafted so close to home, it didn't really work out for them. But you think that it was the best thing for you to go into Belleville and like it worked out the best, or?
Well, it's hard to say because I never knew anything different. And
Yeah.
I moved away when I was 16 to St. Catharines. When I was playing as a 15-year-old in Trenton, I just drive back and forth. And I was in school back then. I was playing football. I was playing junior B. Like it was a pretty hectic schedule back then. But again, hockey wasn't on the horizon. There was no way to know where it was gonna end up. So it was funny. My billets in Belleville, he was my football coach in Center Hastings. So Rob and Irene Cook, they've run the Belleville Bulldogs for years and years, and he's kind of the founder. So he just happened to, he says, so you're going to Belleville? He says, where do you live? And I'm like, I have no idea. So I think they find something for me. And he says, well, why don't you move in with me? And I was like, okay. So they were driving back and forth from Center Hastings every day. There was a crew of teachers, and I went to Moira, which was just up the street.
Oh, that's perfect. And I guess, being so close to home, but at the same time, like you said, you didn't live at home, right? So maybe that's a little bit of the difference too.
Yeah, for sure. You gotta, at some point, if hockey is on your horizon, you to get out, spread your wings a little bit. Like I say, I was only half an hour away. My parents were at every game. If I needed something, they were there. Not an issue there. I could still see my friends back home. But again, I was living in Belleville. It's like the big city to me coming from Madoc, right? So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So,
but we had,
Steve, did you have go ahead, bud.
Go ahead.
So did you have a nickname kind of growing up in hockey? I always like to hear what guys' nicknames are. And if you had one, who started it and how did the whole story go down?
Well, it's kind of funny. I'm called Banger now, so that kind of went back to my first scrimmage with the Bulls. And Terry Crisp Jr., so Terry Crisp was there. His dad was the coach in the NHL, so he was playing for the Bulls, and it was our first scrimmage. And my guy Mike Arthur coming across the blue line and was admiring his pass, and I laid him out pretty good, and he crawled back to the bench, and he said to somebody on the bench, "Who in the heck was that to hit me?" And Terry Crisp had said, "I'm not sure who he is, but he's quite a banger," and that's kind of right from then. All the veterans started calling me Banger, so it stuck over the years.
Perfect nickname.
It's not a half bad nickname, eh?
No, it's perfect.
Follows me around for sure.
Yeah. So what was it like kind of your first year in Belleville? I mean, you played with some big names, right? You had Scott Thornton, Greg Bignell, Brian Marchman was there. So, I mean, was it an adjustment coming to the OHL? Like it's certainly not like it is now, right? It was definitely a rougher league at the time. So a few scraps back in the day, and what was kind of the adjustment period for you?
Oh, it was a few scraps is an understatement. I remember my first scrimmage. I remember Brian Marchman speared Brian Blad right in the throat, and they were two veterans, played together for a couple years, and then they're out fighting at center ice. They break it up. They go back and fight again. They break it up again. One of them Brian Blad goes into the dressing room and mushes at center ice, screaming at him, and he flies back out, and they try and fight again. And then finally Mav was up top, and he said, "That's enough." And then, so I'm sitting on the bench in this first scrimmage or two, and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? I've never seen anything like this. But there was fights. If there wasn't 8 fights in a scrimmage, the coaches were likely looking for people to be more physical for sure. But that's just the way it was back then. I never got in a fight my first scrimmage, and I went to my first training camp, and I was going to a couple of veterans, like, should I just grab somebody? Like, I haven't really had anybody ask me to fight or anything, but you think I should just grab somebody and start swinging? They're like, no, don't worry about it. Wait for the first exhibition game. So that's what I did. First exhibition game, got in a fight, and popped my shoulder out, dislocated my shoulder in the fight. First time I'd popped it out. And not a good feeling when it happens in a fight. The other guy, after my shoulder popped out, gave me one right in the nose. So I think he broke my nose too. And so I was going back to the penalty box, and he was chirping me from the penalty box, and my shoulder popped back in. So I decided it was a good idea to maybe try and get the penalty box and get after him. And of course, that would really endear me to Larry Mavety, right? So, but unfortunately, I had shoulder problems all my whole first year. I had shoulder problems. I got in a few fights, and my shoulder popped out every time. So it was like, I got to stop this. It's not going well. So I had to kind of steer away from fighting, but my shoulder still popped out all the time during my first year, which made it tough. But I still played as a rookie coming in. It's like I say, it's a physical league. We had guys like Troy Crowder was on our team that year. All the veterans, Brian Chapman, he was the captain. Like the guys that a few years before I've grew up watching, right? So all of a sudden I'm playing with them. So obviously it was you feel your way around the league. So it wasn't likely till about playoffs till I actually started to feel like I belonged and started to play more.
Now, did you end up having to get surgery for that shoulder? Because I know guys like that hangs on forever unless you do.
Yep, I've had 2 on each shoulder, unfortunately. So I had the one done after the season, and went up to Toronto. One of the Leafs doctors did it. That was before I was drafted, but it was one of the Leaf doctors. And so the next season, that was my draft year, and started the season, and my shoulder popped out again. I got hit, and I had a pin in there, and it bent right backwards. And so I had to play the rest of that season again, trying not to fight, but still trying to pretend I was tough anyways. But I was 2 on that one. 17 and 18 on my left one, and then I was 22 and 23 on my right one. So I didn't have much luck with my shoulders.
Wow. Was it the shoulder pads, you think, back in the day, or like the lack of shoulder
No,
pads?
it's not nothing to do with the shoulder pads. No, it was just the joints popping out. I think it's a hereditary thing. My dad had his shoulders surgically repaired. I've got a couple cousins, same thing. So just bad genes. Hopefully it's not passed on to my son.
I was just going to say that Dalton seems to be doing well. Hopefully it doesn't happen to him, but
hopefully not. He's never been in a fight before, so.
Well, junior's way different. Well, I guess he's not junior anymore, but he played junior with Trenton there, and way different than it's even different than when I played. I know I'm almost 35 now, but just times have changed. But so with the Bulls, I mean, you played with some characters for sure. Just to name a few names, like Darren McCarty, Brent Gretzky, Mush. You talked about Scott Thornton. What was it like with these guys? Like a lot of them had success and a lot in the NHL. Maybe you can name some stuff that things they would do, good or bad, or.
I say these are guys that you've never met before, and within a week they're your best friends. So there's only a handful of them that I'd say through 16 years of pro and a few years of junior. There's only a handful that you talk to all the time. But like I say, a guy named Dennis Bonvy, I play with him in Binghamton. He called me the other day. He's a scout for Boston, just out of the blue. Pick up like we've been seeing each other the whole time, and I haven't seen him in 10 years. So going back to junior, there's some guys that I still keep in touch with. Jeff Fife, Greg Bignell, Scott Thornton. Him and I are really tight. He comes up fishing with me every year. Obviously, Marchman I was pretty tight with. Rest in peace. It's terrible what happened with him. But there's only a handful that you really keep in touch with. But to think back some of the memories, they all went to Quinny, and I went to Moira. It's kind of funny that so they kept track of them all over at Quinny, and I wouldn't go to school at Moira, and they'd call and say, "You coming to school today?" And I'm like, "No, I got a game tomorrow. I can't make it."
Game tomorrow.
Yeah.
So they didn't force you to go to Quinny then? They didn't, like the Bulls didn't really care, or
they didn't care. I was on the other side of town, and I was, like I say, I was about 150 yards from Quinny, and I didn't have a vehicle anyways, so I would have had nobody to drive me across town. So they were okay with it. And then later on that year, we traded for a guy, and then he went to Moira with me too. So, but pretty much everybody to a T went to Quinny, and it's just the way it was.
what was that like to go to Moira? Because obviously that's not your regular school. And I went to Quinny, so I went and kind of seen what it was like around all the Bulls and whatnot. Did you get treated differently, or like was it good or bad, kind of in that way?
Not really. It likely wasn't as much as the microscope being over at Moira as it would have been at Quinny. I knew Brent Woods, played some baseball with him in the summer before then, so he was going to Quinny at the time, and like he was a big time athlete in high school, so it helped knowing him because I wasn't long meeting a lot of people at Moira. So I went to school. I went and played hockey, so it wasn't like I was hanging out after school in the bleachers or anything. I went to class sometimes, and then when school was over, I went to hockey. So it wasn't like I was hanging around the school or anything.
Yeah, no, for sure. What do you got with the Bulls?
I heard you had a rivalry with one guy in the OHL, and that was Ty Domi. I heard Ty Domi used to chase you around a little bit, and you could get under his skin. Is that true? And do you have any stories about that?
Well, it goes back to my days like when I couldn't fight, and I'd have to kind of steer away from hunting. Not that I was never a tough guy to begin with, but Ty always wanted to fight. Ty made his living that way, and to his credit, like he scored some goals. He played on a line with Mike Ricci the one year, and I think he got 20 some goals that year. So, but Ty was definitely feared throughout our league. That's our first year. That's why Mav had brought in Troy Crowder from North Bay. So they fought a couple times. I remember them fighting at center ice, and Crowder's pounding on his head, and Domi's sticking his tongue out at Mav on the bench, right? So it's he obviously did very well, and his career path was a little different, but he was a tough nut to crack. But I never did fight him. I think he might. I was at a couple different training camps with him, and I think we had a chat one time about him hitting me in the corner and my shoulder popping out. So.
Now, what about Rob Ray? Would he have played against you then?
Yeah, 1 year. Yeah, so he's 2 years older. He used to fight Mush basically every game. If they fought anything less than 25 times over the years, I'd be surprised.
25 times.
Through junior every game, and then through pro, they fought lots of pro. Like I say, sometimes more than once in junior. So you figure they played against each other for 3 years in junior at least. And so back then they would have been in our division, so you would have played them 8 times. I'd be surprised if I was to call Mush's dad and ask him, or Robbie's dad and ask him. For sure, it's 25 or more.
Now, what would their relationship be off the ice, or back then after kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a little different.
Would they get along, or would they have some beef?
Oh yeah, they totally get along at golf tournaments, whatever. Everybody knows each other. You're not as much in junior because you don't see anybody, but as pro, you tend to run into people more away from the rink. But they're just like anybody else. Very, very seldom is there an actual hatred between each other. And don't get me wrong, it does happen. Some guys just hate the other guys, but for the most part, those guys, they go on, they fight, their buddies off the ice, go out and have a beer after the game and shoot the shit. So for the most part, it's a job, and they all realize it.
Yeah, and that's the class of most hockey players, right? Which you gotta love, right? That's got to be one of the best parts of the sport.
Although you think about the Troy Crowder and Bob Probert. I remember going to alumni game down in Kingston, and there's crowds and Probert in the corner having a drink and shooting shit. So everybody would have thought that they absolutely hate each other, right? But all smiles that night.
Do you think too, because a lot of those guys that have that type of position on a team are very similar in personality? You think too, like you think that they almost kind of get along if they get to know each other a little bit more than they might with somebody else? Well,
it's a tough way to make a living, right? So there's back then there would have been a few guys on every team. Now, not if you're lucky to have one, but I guess it's a fraternity if that's the way you make a living. Played with a lot of tough guys over the years. Like I remember Crowds in junior, we got beat out in the first round against Cornwall, and Crowds got called up to New Jersey and played in the playoffs. And his first night fought Jay Miller and might have been Lyndon Byers. So he went
Really?
from 19 years old playing in Belleville, drinking with us at Dolan's, to the next night playing in it was a playoff game. So
Holy
we were there rooting them on, anyways.
So that's one question we always chat about the other guys, and I guess most of them would have been Little Texas back in the day, but probably Little Texas wasn't open yet. You were the Dolans.
No, not
was
even
that downtown?
close. Not even
Not even
close.
close.
Dolan's was downtown, downstairs. It was either Dolan's or Moviola.
Oh, Moviola
Okay.
up. Yep.
Yeah, Moviola was rock and roll back then, but Danny Flynn, when he came in, he liked going to Moviola, so we weren't allowed to go there.
So Dolan's was the hot spot. Yeah, my dad and his buddy have told me a few stories about that place. But no, that's funny how things change. Well, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the draft too, because like, isn't that a crazy story that you and two other teammates all go in the first round to the exact same team in the same year? Has that been ever done before again? You know?
No, and it never will be again. It's just the odds of it happening are just so astronomical. There's actually a guy wrote a book on all the Leafs draft picks over the years. So contacted me and Thordy, and it's funny because I talked to Rob Pearson not long ago, and I said, yeah, this guy sent me this book that he wrote, and I said, he called me and Thordy, why didn't he call you? And he said, oh, I didn't call. He called me, but I didn't call him back. And I'm like, well, now you're not in the book. That's your fault. So yeah, there was no way to tell. At the time, Thordy was rated. I think he went third, so he was rated third or fourth to the Leafs. And the Leafs had 3-round picks, and what's that? The trivia guy, Liam McGuire. You ever hear him? He's a big NHL trivia guy. So, anyways, we were up at a thing with Sean Kelly up in his hometown up north, and this Liam McGuire was there, and he says, anybody stump me with any questions? And I said, okay, I got one for you. I said, there was 3 of us drafted to the Leafs in the first round. Everybody knows that. We all came from the Belleville Bulls. Everybody knows that. And I said to him, how did the Leafs get 3 first-round draft picks? And he thought for a minute, and he looked at me, and he says, I have no idea. So I stumped him. It was actually Ken Reggett got traded to the Flyers for 2 first-rounders that year. So that's how they ended up with 3 first-rounders. So going into the draft, Pearson got hurt. He only played like 30 games. He did very well his rookie year. He was a real prick to play against, scored a bunch of goals, but he wasn't on the radar. So I was rated 10th overall, and but again, went through another whole year of shoulder problems, had my second surgery, and thought everything would be fine. Well, I dropped. So when the Leafs picked, I think it was 12th they picked, and they said the Leafs picked from the Belleville Bulls, and my heart started fluttering, and then they said Rob Pearson. And I'm like, son of a bitch. So again, we had this was down Minnesota. My family's down there. So anyways, whatever. And then it kept going on. And back then, there was only 21 teams back then. So 21 picks in the first round. So we come to the 21st pick, which the Leafs had, and they picked me. So at the time, if you read the book, Gord Stellick, they didn't even clue in what they were doing at the time. It wasn't until after they realized that they just picked 3 kids from the same team.
Huh. So, were they? Did you know they were scouting you all the time? Like in Belleville,
they were in our games all the time.
I guess so. Yeah.
And back then, like I say, if you see this book come on the shelves, or the guy sent me a copy. So he's talking about Harold Ballard was the owner back then, and he was the cheapest guy around, and he wouldn't give. They had like the cheapest scouting budget out of anybody in the league. They said wouldn't scout overseas, wouldn't do anything. So that was the big joke. George Armstrong was at a lot of our games. Gord Stellick, and that's what they said. That's as far as they were allowed to travel. And then the other one was they found a good bar in Belleville, and that's as far as they wanted to go each night. So they were at our games the whole year long, a lot. And then back then we played. Toronto Marlies had a team, so we actually played in Maple Leaf Gardens too, right? So there was 2 or 3 more times where they weren't seeing us.
So the Marlies were in the OHL at the Maple Leaf Gardens?
Yeah.
Back then? Oh, I didn't even realize that. Did you know that, Flem?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know.
Huh.
Yep, and then I think it was my last year. They moved out of there and went to Hamilton. So I don't want sure why teams keep moving to Hamilton, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I heard today that you guys borrowed one of your teammates' cars to go to one of the meetings or something. I don't know if there's truth to this, but Troy Nelson Nelly said that you borrowed his dad's car or his car or something, and then he got it back and he had to take it to the mechanics and spend a bunch of money. I don't know. You know Nelly. So any truth
that wasn't
to that?
me. That was likely Nelly driving.
Oh, maybe.
Blaming
He's probably
somebody
trying
else.
to pass it on.
Yes,
Yeah,
for sure.
still trying to blame it.
No,
He did have another story with Belleville, though. He said that your dad used to sit up behind him for the first and third period, like where I guess the goalie would be for Belleville, up in that second level. That's actually had season tickets later on there in the mid-'90s. But he said one day, I guess the trash can landed on the ice, and he says it was your dad. But I don't know if there's truth to that or not.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a story that stood the test of time. We were playing Ottawa, and it's kind of funny. Greg Walters, who's a good buddy of mine, played on like 5 different teams with him. He's coaching the OHL now. So at the time he was playing for Ottawa, I didn't know him, and this wasn't until years later when we laughed about it. And there was a bad call. The play went down the other end, and there was no meshing or anything back then, right? So supposedly Dad picked up the garbage can for a horseshit call and threw it on the ice, and it landed right beside their goalie. And their goalie jumped, and then everybody looked down and saw the garbage, and there's my dad standing up top. And I forget who was on the bench beside me, and they're like, "Did your dad just throw a garbage can on the ice?" I said, "It sure looks like it." And then the cops came down to see who it was, and the story was they come to Dad to say somebody threw garbage, and Dad was pointing that, "Oh yeah, he went that way. He went out that door." So the cops went looking for the guy or whatever, but yeah.
That's too funny. You wouldn't get away with that now, especially with all the netting.
Well, the other funny one with my dad, I'm not sure whether Nelly would have told it. Nelly wasn't with us at that point. It would have been my last year. We were playing Kinks in the playoffs, and just a brutal series. Like, it was just terrible. That was the game at the time that went to 7-4 overtimes, the longest game in OHL. I think it's still the longest game in OHL history. We got done at 1:45 in the morning.
Wow.
So anyways, during that series, I think it was game 4, and we were spanking Kingston, and all of a sudden the line brawl breaks out. So again, I got the bum shoulder, and I'm trying not to fight, and guy grabs me and gives me a good one, and I said, "Okay, let's go." We go to center ice, and he just tags me with. I go to drop my gloves, and he just tags me with one. So I start bleeding, break my nose, and my dad runs down because he says Mav is the bench. He's coaching Kingston now, actually. So my dad runs down thinking that the guy's trying to pull me in the Kingston bench. He ends up fighting the guy behind the Kingston bench, and I'm fighting the guy's son on the ice.
No way. No way.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So did your dad do better than you, or?
Yeah. Yes, he did. He didn't have a broken nose, anyways. So a couple of his buddies, they followed him down there and end up. We were laughing about it at a Kingston get together for Mav's funeral there last year. So I ran a bunch of the Kingston guys. Had a good chat with Tony Yob, the guy I was fighting at center ice, and pretty crazy.
So what was Mav like back then? Like, what was what was your vibe with him? And everyone says that they loved him and had a lot of passion for the game. Well,
you know what, Mav was. You knew where you stood with Mav. He didn't mind you having a good time as long as he knew you were having a good time. He didn't want anybody sneaking around. If you snuck around, you were gone. And he liked good, hard-nosed hockey. His practices, there's no nonsense out there. We never had water. You didn't get water till practice was over. That's the way it was back then. So you'd have an hour and a half practice. That's when you got your water, was after the hour and a half. Now you'd get banned from coaching if you did that now.
Oh yeah, you're not even
Oh, yeah,
close.
for sure.
Yeah.
I remember I took the HP1 course there when I was coaching AAA, and the guy was watching me, and I was doing a drill, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" And I says, "Well, yet the kids haven't had water in 8 minutes." I'm like, 8 minutes? I said, "We only did one drill." He says, "Yeah, but it was 8 minutes long." I said, "Well, there was 4 pieces, 4 parts to it." I said, "So then I give them water. Then we go on to the next one." And it was unacceptable after 8 minutes. Well, we'd go an hour and a half of a bag skate
Oh
and
Jesus.
not even a drop. So but you know what? Mav had his guys. He had his guys he liked. He did, again, everybody did a lot of trading back then, but I got a lot of respect for Mav. He brought me into the league, showed me originally, like I say, my first year, I didn't play a whole heck of a lot, but by the end of the playoffs after the first year, I made my way into the good books anyway. So, but I see him all the time. Anytime I went to a Kingston Frontenac's game when he was still there, I'd go up and sit with him and Cherry there, Dick Cherry. I'd go up and sit with them and say hello. But yeah, it's too bad. He was a gruff old guy on the outside, but he really stood up for anybody he cared about.
Yeah, well, that's what everyone kind of says about him. So, anyone else that had a really positive influence, maybe a coach, player, whatever, in your Belleville days that you can think of?
Oh, just thinking back, like I say, we switched coaches. Mav went to Kingston after my first year, so Danny Flynn came in. So he was my coach for a couple of years. We fired him the second game of the playoffs.
What?
Yeah, we were. For whatever reason, they thought it was time to make a change. No, second or third game of the playoffs, we fired him. And that's the game we won in Game 7 in Kingston to go on. And they'll never do it again. They'll never allow it again. We played 8 games in 9 nights. And
Holy.
Wow.
We played, once we beat Kingston, we played it was 4 games in 5 nights. And then right away, that's, again, same thing in the spring. The home show, whatever comes in, and there was going to be no ice for the weekend. So we got done after just a brutal series with Kingston. Like I'm telling you, it was just brutal. And the very next night, we played Peterborough, who'd been sitting there for 4 days, 5 days. Played them and played 4 nights in a row. We were out 4 days later. So there's no way they'd allow that to happen anymore. David Branch allowed it to happen back then. So David Branch was one of the main reasons why the team left Belleville. So David Branch is not really high on my list.
No, actually, I coached against him my last year with Quinny. He was the whippy coach.
Yeah, I heard the rules don't apply to him, right?
You wouldn't believe every time you coach against them, it's 5-6 to 1 in penalties, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
and then I'm bringing kids in that back before they were allowed to travel borders, right? Or travel.
Oh yeah.
And he'd bring kids in, and yeah, different rules for different people, right? So whatever.
Yeah. Politics, which is BS, but
yes.
You got any more questions regarding the Bulls there, Flem?
Not one regarding the Bulls, but a little bit. But so when you get drafted Toronto, like how big of a deal is it around here? Like obviously being a local boy, like were people just over the moon for you kind of thing, or what was it like? Was people bugging you about being a Leaf all the time?
Oh yeah, and it's still get it. And I always correct everybody. Oh, this kept drafted. He played for the Leafs. I said, no, I didn't play for the Leafs. I got drafted to the Leafs when I got traded from the Leafs my first year pro. I said, so I never actually played for the Leafs. At a couple training camps, like crazy stories, like the guys you're in training camp with back then. Brad Marsh was my roommate the first training camp when I was 18. They say you're walking. Remember going out for lunch with Wendell Clark. I remember me and Thordy and Kent Hulse walking down Yonge Street and people running across the street because we were walking down the street with Wendell Clark, right? So just surreal when you're 18 or 19 years old. I was to be part of it. So yeah, everybody around here is a Leaf fan. There's the odd, and there was no Senators back then, right? So the odd Montreal fan, but for the most part, it's all Leaf fans. So. Yeah, we were in Minnesota, come back the next day and see our picture splashed all over the Toronto Sun and everything. It's pretty cool. It was there's a draft picture. The OHL used to put out a magazine back then. So we were on the front cover of the magazine. And it was funny. That hung in the Belleville Arena for years. And then when the Bulls left, all those pictures that used to hang up top there, they were throwing them out. And somebody called me. Yeah, they were throwing them out. Well, they had them in the garbage. And
That's BS.
Kim Kittle actually called me and said, "You're not going to believe this, but I just found this picture of you guys in the garbage. Do you want it?" I'm like, "Hell yeah." So I don't have one, right? So it hangs in my bar now. But again, why they get rid of all those years of history, I have no idea. By just turfing them right in the garbage.
Yeah, I mean, give them away, put them in an auction, a charity, just something. Give them back to the people.
Sure. All those years of all the Bulls players that come through there, and I say right back. Like I watched them from the time I was a young kid when they came in. Was it 80? What they come in 82 or whatever? I used to go to the game.
They had junior A for 2 years or something first, wasn't it?
Yeah. Before they got major. Yeah.
So why do you think there was such a disrespect when the Bulls left? Like like they took the banners down, they're hanging the rafters, like they're throwing pictures in the garbage. Like obviously it was kind of a tough time for everyone, but what do you think kind of spun that negativity around the whole thing?
Well, I guess when the team was sold, it was pretty heart-wrenching, to tell you the truth, watching it happen. It had a guy that was going to make a bunch of money. So when people see that, it didn't matter to anybody around the area, people that watched the Bulls right from the get-go. It didn't matter. So people were ticked off, and but I just don't understand with just wiping out the history of it all. It's like they were trying to pretend that they were never there, because that's what it feels like now.
Yeah. Do you think there'll ever be a team back here, an OHL team?
Well, obviously not if there's a Senators team. Everybody hears the rumors that eventually the Senators are going to get a rink downtown, and then they would move their farm team out to the Corrals or out to Canada. So at that point, free up the rink. If they can't complain about the rink not being good enough now, because if it's good enough for AHL hockey, it should be good enough for OHL hockey.
100%.
So I'd like to see it. Obviously, something back with some sort of Bulls reference to it, anyways. But who knows if a team comes in? I don't whether expansion's on the horizon, but there's teams that move all the time. So it'd be awesome to see. But I think the Sens have a 5-year agreement, so likely not till after that at least.
Yeah, and it'll take a while if Ottawa does get that team or the arena downtown. That's going to take a few years, anyways.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Well, let's bring it back to something a little bit more positive here. Tell us about your first NHL game and maybe the experience, and when you first got the call that this is gonna happen, and maybe the night before or however this worked out, and then obviously through the game.
Well, it was in playing for Chicago. It was in Boston, so I'd actually gotten traded from Boston. So I got traded from Toronto. My first year, month into the season, I got traded for a guy, Rob Sameta, who was a first rounder the year before, and he was holding out from Boston. So I got traded for him 1-for-1. So I played in Boston's farm team for the rest of that year and then part of the next year. So then I got traded to Chicago, I think the January of the next year. So I wasn't really playing a lot with the Boston farm team. When I went to Chicago, went to Indianapolis and had a really good run half of the year, and it wasn't until the next season I'd gotten called up a couple of times, but just to get bag skated and never played. So when we were going in, it was funny because when I was in Boston, again, when I throw these names around, it's just because I'm still in awe sometimes. Ray Bork was he was my roommate. Well,
unreal.
Yeah, so Ray Bork didn't stay in the hotel during training camp. He stayed at home. So every time I'd come in the morning and he'd say, "Hey kid, did they check curfew on me again?" And I said, "I think you're good." And so fast forward to when we're playing in Boston Garden, I get called up. Again, I didn't play much. If I played 6 or 7, likely not even 6 or 7 shifts. But one of the shifts, I skated by Ray Bork, and he kind of gave me the double take, right? So at least he remembered me. And so it wasn't long. Only played the one game and then got sent right back down. So it wasn't. He had Daryl Sutter was the coach, and fast forward to when I went to San Jose, Daryl Sutter was the coach there too. So kind of funny that after all those years between NHL games, it was the same coach. But it wasn't like he was waiting for him. He was just shit luck is all it was.
Now, would that have been at the old Boston Garden?
That was at the Boston Garden, yep.
The old one there. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. You know, the Ray Bourque, one of the best defensemen ever to play. Like,
yeah, like I say, would he remember that? No, but
no.
But I remember it, so it's in my vault, anyways.
Yeah, and at the time he remembered you, right? He kind of looked at you twice. But what were you nervous before? Like, when did you know you were going to play? Was it the day before kind of thing? Or?
Well, I got called up the day before, had a practice, and I knew I was in the next morning. So at the time, Brian Marchment, he was in Chicago at the time also. So he actually sat out and I played.
Oh, really?
So kind of funny. Again, I was went to Brian's place for dinner, and then whatever, we flew out the next day, I think it was, and then he was sitting out whatever, having a rough go. So I think they sat him out and they were calling me up to piss him off maybe, but it worked. He stuck around for a while.
Yeah, no doubt for sure. Well, and then you kind of followed him, didn't you? Because he was in San Jose when you went to San Jose, wasn't he?
Yep. Yeah, that was years later. Scott Thornton was also in San Jose. So Scott, Brian had a place in Marmora, so he was always up this way. Scott, I was best man at his wedding, so we were all pretty tight. And so to get to play with those guys in San Jose, I was up there for a couple of weeks, played 5 games, and like I say, had a wicked time. We were on a road trip to up through where we go to Columbus, Montreal, and then we were supposed to play in Toronto and then Pittsburgh. Well, I played every game up to then, and then had a whole bunch of people come to Montreal and got a penalty in the first period, and then never saw another shift. And that was that was my last shift in the NHL. That was Sutter decided that was he didn't want me on the ice anymore. So then I don't know how many people coming to Toronto to the game, and I had to call and tell them, I said, I'm pretty sure I'm not playing tomorrow. So then practice the next day, and yeah, you're out. And I'm like, yeah, that's not good.
And that team looks like it. They had some players on that one there. Owen Nolan, Solani was on that team.
Yeah.
Marlowe.
Yeah.
There's some pretty big names there.
Another roommate story for you. Solani was my roommate, and he was actually there the day of 9/11. We're sitting in our hotel room getting ready to go into. We had fitness testing that morning, and I'd called home, talked to my wife just to say the 3 hours time difference, and she's like, "Do you not see what's going on?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's, "What happened in New York?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. We just woke up. The TV's not on," and turned the TV on, and I yelled at Solani. I'm like, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe this." So that was 9/11. I looked at him and I said, "I'm a nobody, but you're going to remember this day."
Holy shit. I mean, yeah. That's kind of cool. Obviously, a negative. We all know the story with 9/11, but something that, I mean, he'll never forget too,
sure. Right? Yes, for sure. It's crazy. But as I said, we still went to the rink and did our fitness testing, and we were actually supposed to head to, I think, up to Alaska or something for a couple of games, and they canceled everything because nobody was flying anywhere. But we went on with training camp. It wasn't really anything we were going to do in San Jose, I guess.
Yeah, you're far away. Yeah. What was Solani like then? You know.
Well, I say he was a superstar, right? So they brought him in there. He had all his good years in Winnipeg and Phoenix, and but yeah, wicked guy. Like, he's very articulate. Definitely, you see any of the stuff there. He big into cars and stuff. He had a couple of his crazy cars there where he'd give you a lift to the rink. But yeah, wicked guy, way down to earth. Like, you would never know sitting next to him. He didn't know me from a hole in the ground, but just treat you like anybody else.
That's cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so
unreal.
you got an NHL assist. Do you remember? Do you remember how you got that?
Yeah, I was on the ice with Marchman actually, and
Really?
he got caught. He got caught up in the play, I think, and it was a 2-on-1, and down comes. I know who was coming down the left wing. It was Joe Sakic with the puck. I'm not sure who was on the right side, and I kind of stayed in the middle, just whether it's a good idea to make Joe Sakic shoot, but I didn't want him to pass across. So I ended up getting in the way and blocking the shot. The puck went right to Mush, and Mush rushed it all the way up the ice and ended up passing to Marlowe, I think it was. And I was thinking to myself, I think I might have got an assist off my shin pad there, but they'll never get that. And sure as shit, they caught it. So it was nice.
Oh, I love that story too, especially with Sakic.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That's a keeper for sure.
Yeah. So what was Mush like, even kind of like in Belleville? Like, when did he become like, because he was one of the most feared defensemen, like probably in the NHL in that era, right? So when did he kind of come to that? Like, was that kind of in Belleville, or was that kind of happened in the NHL for him?
He was feared right from, he was, when he was 16, so I was a year younger, and then that would have been his underage. So technically I didn't play for him for 2 more years. So I would have been 14 watching, and I remember going to watch the game, and he was like looking sideways at everybody, looking to fight everybody. I'm like, my God, look at this guy. And somebody's, yeah, he's only 16. And I'm like, what? So he's running around hitting guys. I'm like, wow, this guy's going to be quite a player. So by the time I got there 2 years later, yeah, like it was crazy. Like he would hit 2 or 3 guys every single game, like just open ice, whether it was a hip check or whether it was a big body check. He took all comers, anybody wanted to fight. I don't know how many times Mush would have fought Domi too. It seemed every game. And it wasn't just about fighting. Like Mush's last year, I'm pretty sure he had a point a game as a defenseman. Played in the All-Star game. So he was feared for basically his whole junior career. He wasn't as offensive in the NHL, but he was an All-Star in the OHL. So it was something to see for sure.
He's got to be one of the best players from this area to ever do it, right? Like he was just he was the man back then.
Yes, well, he's from Toronto, but his family has they had some properties up on Crow Lake. Eventually, right during that time period, and they all built up there. And Mush had a place on Crow Lake. His brother, his dad. So again, me being a Madoc, them being Marmara, so they'd be back there every summer. So it was, but yeah, first rounder of the Bulls, then a first rounder to the NHL, and the GM that drafted him, Ferguson, he was Ferguson's type of player, right?
Yeah.
You would know Tyrion, Greg, rest in peace, Greg Tyrion, then probably pretty good too then. Because I think, we've had, I'm good friends with the youngest Tyson, but we've had Jason there on, and he was talking about Bush. Because they're right with Crow. Oh, yeah, he's quite the character. He was telling stories about Wendell Clark, find them in the closet or something. It was pretty crazy, but when I was looking at
Jason, not Jason, there's 3 brothers, right? So Ryan comes fishing with us on a trip that we go on here the last few years. But those 3 Tyrion boys, they had their hands full with them for sure.
Oh yeah, Tyson's my age, and I actually played a little bit of Trenton with him, and he's crazy. Oh yeah, he's quite the character. But I was looking at a bunch of your rosters, guys you played with, and your first year pro, you played with Lou Crawford. It looks like.
Yes. I didn't really know Lou at the time. When I got traded to Boston, so I went to Maine, so Maine Mariners, I didn't know anybody. So I'm walking in as a 20-year-old kid, and they joked about it, him and his wife Sherry, or they would joke about it years later, that I used to just sit in the corner and not say anything. And they're like, now look at you. You won't shut up. And so I knew Lou a bit from skating with him in the summer, but I didn't know Lou. So again, it was an awesome experience. You look back to some of those old guys that you think back then they were old. Well, they were like 28 and 30 years old when I was 20, and I'm thinking they're old. Geez, I played till I was 36. So what some of those guys are thinking.
What was Lou like though? Like, could you see that he was going to be a kind of a coach after? Obviously, end up coaching Belleville to the OHL championship years later.
Well, they had Louis and I actually ran a hockey school in Madoc for years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, back in the early 90s. We ran it, I think, for 5 years. And then when Louis was getting ready to retire, and he says, I don't have time. He was helping Mav at the time, and before he took over head coach. And he says, I don't have time to do the hockey school. And I said, well, I can't do it alone. Just I got to know Louis very well. I really enjoy getting to spend time with him because he makes me laugh. He's a funny bastard, and I said, kind of got to know the whole family. The whole family worked at hockey school. There was Floyd, there was Mark, there was Michael, there was Mark would be there working. Like, he'd have the whole family, Eric, everybody.
I swear I went to that hockey school 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, I got a funny story about the hockey school after. Yeah, I got a funny story about it after.
Northern Development Professional Hockey School, we called it. Yeah.
My old man always tells this story, and he said it's the best money he's ever spent sending me to that hockey camp. So I think we went. I don't know if you went this year, Jeff, but I think it was the year after Tyke. So I don't know how old we are, like 8 or 9. And my dad tells a story that the first time you go into the room, and he says, "You come on, all the parents in there getting the kids dressed." And the first thing you said is, "All the parents leave. You guys can just go home," kind of thing. The kids are going to learn to dress themselves. Like, if a couple parents want to stay behind to help tie their skates. So he said, from the point I was about 9 years old on, I always put my own equipment on, and said, every time you take them somewhere new and you were putting your equipment on, people would think you were like abusing your kids because they were all in there, tying their skates, putting everything on. And I was just 10 years old, just going there, doing your own equipment, right? So best investment he ever made, he said.
Yeah, we had, like I say, all my buddies worked. Like, we'd have, whether you guys remember, like Brian Marchman, Scott Thornton. We had Chris Draper there the 1 year. Chris Draper, I played with him before he got traded to Detroit. And so he came up the one summer with Greg Walter, who's a coach in the OHL now. Anybody that kind of was around here, Andrew Castles, anybody, because I ran all the skates after the school. So I would just say, come in for 2 hours and help us out and shoot them $100, right? So they're like, yep, no problem. Then we'd skate after. So we skated every night. So it wasn't hard getting the guys to come around when they knew the skate was going to
happen. So just going back to the pro days, you played in quite a bit of cities, moved around a little bit. Back then, though, was the IHL and the AHL kind of on par with each other, and one was kind of east and one was west, or am I kind of getting mixed up here?
Yeah, pretty much, but they were definitely on par. But the I had more teams that were independent. So they had some teams that didn't have any NHL affiliates that would maybe get some teams, but back then, like, there was a lot better cities to go to in the I. Like, I played in Vegas for a year and a half. Like, I played in Long Beach, California for a little while. Like, I played in Houston. Like, there were some wicked towns back then. And then the AHL, you could go root around out in the Maritimes, go to St. John's, Fredericton, Halifax had a team back then. So it was kind of based more on the East Coast, and then a little bit interior, but the I was kind of all over the U.S. And then end up having a team in Winnipeg, actually, for a bunch of years too. Randy Carlisle used to coach them. And so, yeah, they were on par, definitely. If they were smart, they would have had a championship after the championship to decide, because a lot of those players were interchangeable, and it didn't matter to the NHL teams whether their affiliate was IHL or AHL. So I played in a lot of different cities, and I had good stats in either league. And some years were better than others, but I had a lot of big years in both leagues. So it wasn't like one league was way better than the other.
Las Vegas, what was that like? Obviously, there's a team now, but years ago there wasn't. Was it big, like kind of how they're doing? Obviously, it's lower league then, but they kind of put it on like they say, oh, it's the Las Vegas show. They got a pregame, all that fun stuff. Did they kind of do it up like that a little bit, or?
Yeah, they tried to on a smaller scale. So they only had a team there, IHL team for 5 years, but they were very successful. And I got there towards, I think I was maybe there year 4, and they just they tried to do it. They still got it. They likely averaged 8,000 fans, which is amazing. Played at the UNLV Center, had like hollow ice. When you're skating, you can hear the underneath. It's hollow, so it was really weird. Obviously, being in the minors and back then, you're thinking to yourself, "Oh my God, we're going to Vegas." So there was a lot of people. We had a pretty good home record.
Oh yeah, for sure. What would you guys hit up the strip often, or any good spots?
Not a lot. There's a strip there. We lived just off. We lived outside of the strip. I used to golf 3-4 times a week. It was wicked. We had like 3 or 4 courses. You pay $10 and golf for the day. It was wicked.
$10.
Yeah. So yeah, I had a great time there. I had my wife. She wasn't my wife at the time, but she ended up coming out there the second year I was there. And then towards the end of that year, she got a job out there. She's a nurse, so she was working out there. And then at the end of the year, we were doing okay. We just signed. Peter Nedved had signed with them just after I left, and I'd got a call at the time that St. John's, which was Calgary's farm team, were making a run for the playoffs, and I had no trade, anything. I didn't need to go, and they said, we want to sign you for another year, and we want to see you in the NHL this year. So I'm like, yep, I'm in. And so we worked out a deal. I got traded for 2 or 3 players from St. John's, and they went to Vegas, and I went there. And just one of those stories that a promise that was never fulfilled, and made a deal to go there, and then waited for my call up that week and never got the call. And so we ran out of roster spots. So it's just one of those things that nothing's ever set in stone until it happens, right?
Yeah, for sure. What would be another 1 or 2 real good cities that you enjoyed playing in? Maybe due to the warm climate or fans or whatever the case.
Well, I had a really good year in Providence. Peter Laviolette was our coach, and we. When I got there, I got traded. This was the year after St. John, and I told them, I said, I'm not playing in St. John next year. When they were signing me the contract, I said, send me to the I somewhere. So they end up loaning me to Providence. So at the time, Providence the year before won 18 games out of 80. So they were the worst team in the league by far. So I looked at they called me and said, we made a deal. I loaned you to Providence. I'm like, Providence? That's not the IHL. I said, I want to go to the IHL. And, well, this is where you're headed. If you want to get paid, this is where you got to go. And I was making pretty good money in the minors back then. And so I said, okay, well, I looked and Peter Laviolette called, and he was just getting started. He'd just come up in the East Coast League, and their record at the time was 2-4. I'm like, okay, here we go. They suck again this year. And we ended up with 56 wins that year.
Oh, shit. That's a good year. Yeah.
Yeah, it was wicked. I think there's teams that won more regular season games, but they didn't win the championship. So we got the most as of last year, I think it was. We had the most regular season wins and won the championship in the same year. So I ended up having a wicked year there. I had a lot of great people there. Our coaches were, like I say, Peter Laviolette, Bill Armstrong was the assistant coach. He was the same age as me. And when he got there, when I got there, he stopped playing. He was playing D and then being like the Reggie Dunlop assistant coach, still playing. As soon as I got there, he stepped full-time behind the bench. And so he's the GM of Phoenix now. So
okay.
that was our 2 coaches. And we had a lot of guys that they always say, I've always said it's not always the best players that win, it's the best team. Well, we had a lot of guys that were first team All-Star, guys that played in the NHL. But at the end of the day, if you look back at the roster, there wasn't any big, huge superstars. We just had the best team. And Randy Robitaille was the leading scorer in the league or close to it. Landon Wilson played in the NHL for a little while. He was first team All-Star. I had 45 points and I was third in defense scoring on my team. So we had had a wicked team. So obviously when you win, everything's better. Go through and to look back at it. My daughter was born in Rhode Island that playoffs. We actually had Laviolette was saying, he was trying to work out the games and when's your wife due? And so we actually had her induced between playoff games. So she still says what she did for that team for playoffs, right? So
and you guys went on to win the Calder Cup year.
Yes. Yeah, we beat Rochester in 6 games. So I was it was funny, not a funny story. It was game 3. We were up 2-0. Go to play in Rochester game 3 and getting ready to go for warm up, bend down, tie up my skates, and I threw my back out.
Oh.
I was done. I couldn't play anymore the rest of the year. I couldn't stand up straight. So I had 12 or 15 people down watching the game in Rochester, and they're looking for me in warm up and looking for me during the game. And then I walk out and they're like, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I threw my back out tying my skates." They're like, "Are you kidding me?" So I tried to played the next game, but I could barely even skate. And then we won in game 6 at home. So it was, I got to go on the ice and lift the cup, but I didn't have my equipment on. So somebody said, "Well, let's put our equipment on." There was some guys that they do now. They put their equipment on and go out, pretend they played. And somebody says, "Put your equipment on, we'll all go out." And I said, "If I put my equipment on, I goddamn well be playing."
What was the celebration like for after that? And did you guys get rings or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I got a ring sitting in my bar. Celebration, I say all night. I know I was sitting on the curb when the sun came up, waiting, just looking for a few of us sitting out there looking for a cab. But, yeah, it was a real close knit. Everybody says that when they win, they're all close knit. Well, I can attest to it because you go through the battles, right? So.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. I didn't realize that you'd won a Calder Cup. So, definitely
the year before in St. John, we lost in the finals. So,
no way.
Yeah, we lost in the finals to Philadelphia, who had the best team, and we lost in game 6 to them. So it was good to get right back at the next year and be able to win.
Yeah, for sure. One guy I wanted to ask you about when I was looking up your rosters, one of my favorite players growing up. From what I saw, it looks like you played maybe 1.5 or 1 season and part with him. Was Marty St. Louis? You played with him?
Yeah, he was in St. John when I was there. So only that year, the 1 year at the end of the year, and then so the next year he was starting to get a little. So funny story. So our coach at the time, again, they had a real good team, a lot of big prospects, and the GM and Brian Sutter, I think, was the coach of Calgary at the time. Calgary was out of the playoffs, so they called down and said, "Yep, we're coming down to St. John, and we want this guy in the power play. We want this guy in the power play." And he said, "Okay, yep, no problem." He made the lineup card. He sat everybody they wanted on the power play. He sat out.
No way,
including St. Louis.
What?
Yeah. So again, St. Louis wasn't the player he became. He was still working his way through. He played a little bit in the eye before he went to St. John, but yeah, he sat. There was 3 of them. He sat them all out, and they were so mad. He's like, "I'm the one that makes the lineup, not you." Well, he wasn't back next year.
Yeah, no, for sure. That he almost fired himself that way, but
that's funny. So Steve, what do you think of the NHL now? Like, it's a completely different product from when you played, right? So do you still enjoy to watch hockey? Like, did you ever have any thoughts of getting back into it? Coaching, scouting, anything like that?
No, I moved around so much that when I was finally done, I was like, that's enough. And some of the times you're expected to get traded, or sometimes there was a lot of free agent signings. So if somebody was going to pay me 10 or 20 grand more to go somewhere else, then I would just go, right? So I jumped around a lot, but by the end of it, I was sick of jumping around. In my last few years, I didn't move around a lot. I had a family, and I wasn't jumping around. But When it was all said and done, I got settled, retired when my kids were still young, while they were just starting to get into school. So I was like, no, I'm settling down roots. I had a house back here in Madoc, and so it was time to retire and get a real job. And so the scouting, lots of my friends are scouts. Go to any rink, no matter where I am, I can walk around and find somebody that I know, and it's pretty nice. But I never thought. I told the kids I coached with Randy Ewens, kind of from the time the kids were 8, 9 years old, I guess, and then I took over for major bantam and minor midget. And I told the kids all along, giving them shit for whatever, I said, do you think I'm doing this for me? Because I'm not going to coach past you guys. And I said, I have no aspirations to coach anything further. And I really don't. And you know what? With my son playing hockey now still, we're down there all the time. I wouldn't have time to do anything anyways. And it's been all right from the get-go, from the time I was done coaching when they were 15. To be able to go to his games all the time, that's all that matters to me at this point.
Now, was it easy for you to step away, though? Sorry.
When I was retiring originally,
yeah,
not at all. I was 36 years old, and it was getting to the point my body was broke down. I've just had 2 hip replaced, so I haven't been able to skate in 3 years, and I'm to the point now. I was getting older, and I wasn't making as much money as I was when I was in my prime. So I was like, it's not worth it. I was in the NHL hanging on for $1 million. Not a little different story, but I was in the minors and said, okay, no, it's starting to not make sense here now. And that was the first time that I really thought that, okay, I didn't have an eye towards it being my last year, but as the season went on, I heard every day, and it's a grind, right? So, and the kids, I kept getting a year older, and the rookies kept coming in at 20 years old. So
now you ended up playing a year in Germany, didn't you?
Yeah, that was during the lockouts.
Okay.
Yeah, so they had the lockout, and so I was in Binghamton, and for 2 years, and then the next year they already knew at the end of the year there was going to be a lockout. So they were already making plans, and they said, well, we're going to have all these prospects in here for next year, and won't be any room for any veterans. So they knew everybody was going down there and loaded up. So it wasn't until looking into Germany, and again I got to play in the DEL, which was the top league. Well, a lot of NHL guys went over there too, so it ended up being a pretty good league. And again, but at 34, 35 years old, I wish I had gone 5 years before and seeing how it was, because it's a different brand of hockey. I remember my first game. I missed training camp, everything. They signed me, and I went. I had a practice. Never played in a game with no red line before. So I remember, first period, and I see their defenseman behind the net, and I see this guy take off, and I'm like, where the hell is he going? So I'm watching the D, and all of a sudden there's a bank pass to the far blue line. The guy was in the breakaway, and I go back to the coach is like, what are you doing? I said, tell you the truth, I forgot there was no red line. I've never played a game of hockey without the red line before. So it was a good experience. My kids were young, so I'm glad we did it. We got to explore over there, got to go around to Italy after the year. We drove around Italy. We went through Switzerland. Like I say, it was just a wicked spot to tour around and see all the history over there.
No, do you like why didn't you go earlier? Did you have any offerings anywhere over in Europe? Let's say 5 years
I
early?
did. Yeah, kind of what happened. Never really thought about it until I started to get likely towards my 30s, and then when I was in San Jose, I was playing in Kentucky, and I had a career year, and I signed a 2-year deal with them, and I had a career year. I got 23 goals. I had 73 points. I was first team All-Star, and another year back then it was called an option year, and they could pick it up or not. And so I had all these teams. Now I'm first team All-Star where we want to sign you. And I'm like, yeah, well, I got to see what's happening with San Jose. And I got to see what's happening with San Jose. And I got to see what's happening with San Jose. And I got to see what's happening with San Jose. And I got to see what's happening with San Jose. And I got to see what's happening with San Jose. And they picked up my contracts. There wasn't really much I could do anyways. But again, that was the year that I got to go up and play those 5 games and play with Thordy and Mush. And so it all worked out.
Now, playing in San Jose for the time you were there, was it a lot different than like when you said when you were younger and you're walking the street with Wendell Clark and people are going across the road? Was San Jose kind of the opposite, where it wasn't as well known, or was it kind of because it's the
just
NHL?
Around the rink, yeah, but walk around town, not even close. Nobody there. Everybody lived up in the mountains and stuff. Nobody knew. Not even close. Like, you're in such a bubble in the Canadian cities compared to the American cities. It's like it's not even on the same wavelength. Not even close.
Now, if you had the option, let's say you're going to play in the NHL, what would you prefer? Because some guys, like that limelight, and other guys they don't want to be bugged all the time. What's your personality like?
It'd be pretty nice walking out of the rink and your flip flops and onto the beach for the afternoon. Can't do that in Canada, can you?
Oh, no,
not for very long, anyways.
Yeah, well, there might be a guy number 34 for Toronto who might be looking to do that in a couple of years. Flem, what do you think?
Keep it down over there. He's not going to Tempe, at least. So.
Oh, jumpins. Now, there was a couple guys that played for the Belleville Bulls years later, probably almost a decade later, that you ended up playing with a little bit pro, I think. A couple of them were, I think it was Jason Spezza for a bit. I got Papineau on here and Jonathan Chichu. Did you play with those guys?
Yeah,
not all at the same time, but
yeah, it would have been Chichu first. Chichu came to he got drafted by San Jose, so he played that big year that I was talking about, Kentucky. He was a true 20-year-old rookie, and he had I think he had 30 or 32 goals or something as a 20-year-old rookie.
Holy shit,
yeah, so he had a wicked year. We had a very good team. We had lots of high scores. Jim Montgomery, who's the coach of Boston now, he was on our team. Like, we had 3 or 4 guys in the top 10 scores. So we had a wicked team. But Chichu, he was there, and then played with him the next year too in Cleveland. But then he got hurt. But 2 years later, he was scoring 50 in the NHL, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, crazy where he went. But the year before he was with you, he was scoring 5 goals in Game 7, wasn't it, Flem?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And Papineau had 6 points in Game 7. No one talks about that.
Papineau had 6. So I think you would have played a little bit with him, Papineau. Do you remember him?
Yeah,
Justin?
he was a little bit in Worcester in St. Louis's farm team. I didn't stick around there very long, so he didn't really get a good enough chance, I didn't think, either. He got 5 goals in an NHL exhibition game. And
what?
Oh, yeah. Got 5
Holy
goals.
Shit, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and got sent down.
5 goals in one game.
I'm almost positive it was 5 goals in one game.
Wow, we got to look that up, Fleming, because that's insane.
You got to look it up. Would have been 2000 and about 2002 or 2002.
That's probably right around the time he went to Europe. So I bet maybe that played a little.
After that, because he was just yeah. So, and then Spezza, I played with him, and so he was a 19-year-old. They have that rule because 19-year-old North Americans aren't allowed to play in the minors, right? So, because he started as a 15-year-old, they made that rule that if you'd already played 4 years junior, that you could turn pro. But you could tell he was special. Like, it was crazy, the stuff that he did as a 19-year-old playing against us old grizzled veterans, and it was just something to watch. His hands were just crazy.
So you would have played with Spezza you would have played the year like right after he finished in Belleville. Then would that not have been then?
Yeah, that's when he went.
Yep.
Yeah,
he went played the year in Binghamton. Yeah, him and Ray Emery and Brian McGrattan, they lived in a house together. That was quite a shit show.
Okay. I can only imagine.
What was Ray Emery like?
Oh, he was pretty. He kind of marched to his own drum. He's passed away too.
Yeah.
He was in his own zone, but as a rookie, he was a very good rookie. He was the number 1 goalie as a rookie. So I was the fine master, and it didn't matter to him. late for practice. He didn't care. It's whatever. He knew he was playing, right? And the coach wasn't going to not play him.
So do you say you were the fine master?
Well, yeah, there's always little fines, right? So.
Oh yeah.
Always and if everything goes into the fund, and then that's what you have your parties with. So.
Was he tough as nails though back then? Because who was it he fought with Buffalo? Was it no? Who was it?
It was Peters.
No,
he fought
Peters.
Peters.
That's right. I knew it wasn't him.
But he fought Josh Gratton in the AHL one year. I don't know if it was that year or not, but
that was a crazy brawl. Like that was it might have been a different one. They started a brawl. We had Emery said to this one guy, and he says, "Don't if you skate through my crease again, I'm gonna smoke you." And the guy skated through again, and sure, he just started swinging on him. Well, Philly Phantoms had a crazy tough team. Like they had Berube was on that team at that time, for Christ's sakes. So, anyways, there's a 5-on-5 brawl, and McGrattan's on the ice, and McGrattan fights Vandermeer. There's two Vandermeer brothers, Jim and then Peter, and they're both on the ice at the same time. Well, McGrattan fought them both. Then Emery was fighting them. And the second line to come out, we had a tough guy on the bench, and I looked at him and I said, "I'm almost guaranteeing you're up next." So they got everybody kicked the whole two lines out, and I said, "You're up." And then the coach looks at me and says, "Banger, you're up." I'm like, "What?" So we go on the ice. PJ Stock lines up at center ice, dumps the puck in, and goes in and runs the goalie. So another 5-on-5 brawl kicks off. We all get kicked out again. So there's 10 of us. There's 10 of us sitting in the box. The next stoppage, another 5-on-5. So they kicked them out by the end of the game. It was
nobody playing.
It was 3 in a row. It was 3 in a row. Yeah. So if you look at if you Google search it, and it's Neil Little, and it's flying goalie. So they're in this big pile up. And he comes right from the far end of the ice and then jumps in the pile. Well, his feet hit first, and he flips right over the pile and comes out on the other side. Yeah. So that was the Philly. But Emery, he would have fought anybody. He didn't care. He was a tough dude too. He took some boxing stuff, and I wouldn't have wanted to tangle with him on or off the ice.
No doubt. So would that have been kind of the craziest brawl story that you would have had throughout the years, or any other ones, during your pro career?
That's definitely the craziest. There was always line brawls. That's whatever, not a big deal. But like I say, three stoppages in a row. And
yeah, that's insane.
It was a lot of crazy tough guys on both teams, but Philly was just stacked. They always had a bunch of tough guys. So that would have been 03, 04, 02. Yeah, it would have been 03. But yeah, if you look up flying goalie, that's where it all started, and he come all the way down the ice. And so that was the first of the three line brawls.
We'll have to Google that for sure. One other guy I just wanted to ask about was I think it was your last year, Mark Giordano. You played with him, did you not?
Yeah, in Omaha. Yeah, so it's back when he was making $35,000 on an East Coast League contract.
No way. And now he's played how long? Well, how old would he be? Mid-30s now, Flem?
He's the oldest player in the league. I think he's like 37. I'm pretty sure he's the oldest player in the league, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess Char's gone now. He was like 43 or something. But
yeah, so I've been retired. This would be going on 17 years that I've been retired. So
holy shit!
He would have started playing right after that. He went to Russia for a year. As a rookie, he was the year before, didn't play a lot. Come in and he just even at training camp, I was like, wow, this guy's pretty good looking. He's got wicked feet, and he was strong as like he broke the. Ginla had the record for you had to bench press your body weight, or however much you could bench press 4 times. That's what it was. And Giordano broke Ginla's record. It was 300 some pounds. And he wasn't a real big guy. Like he was 6 foot, maybe 200, 205 pounds, but he was just strong and really quick feet. And say, look, he won the Norris.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That long ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So back then he was just a 21-year-old finding his way.
So, Fleming, you got any questions? Maybe just throw this one of my last ones out here. Name maybe one of the toughest guys you would have played with, and maybe the best skill-wise as well. Throw one in each way throughout the years.
Well, it's tough to say too many were tougher than McGrattan for sure.
Yeah.
But it seemed everywhere, likely the first 10, 12 years, every team had 3 or 4 guys that the whole fourth line was heavyweights, right? So if I was to look back all the rosters and think about some of the guys you played with and against, but it'd be pretty tough. And even McGrattan, the first year I played with him, he wasn't feared, not at all. And I'd actually got there, and because he's a big, intimidating guy, right? And I actually turned, I'd said to one of the guys when I first got there, I said, "What the heck's with that guy?" And I said, "Should he not be just out here just killing guys?" And they're like, "Yeah, I got knocked out there at the start of the season, and he hasn't been the same since." And it took him a whole year to come back from that, and then he got in a fight against Sean Thornton. Sean Thornton was still in the minors, and Sean Thornton hit him a couple, and he was fine. And all of a sudden, he started teeing off on Thornton, and just like he took over, the next year he got 550 minutes.
He got that confidence back, eh?
It's like you just need to take a few to know he can still take it. And
yeah, he knew he could take a punch. That's the way he fought. He didn't fight defensive. It was just stand in there, and he got stung a few times. Like Boogert stung him, Colt Norris stung him. He got stung later in his career when he was in the minors. But again, it's tough to say that there wasn't too many more that would have been more feared than him. There's lots of a guy that never played in the NHL much. I shouldn't say much. He likely played 75 games. Dennis Bonvie. Well,
yeah.
If you look at his stats, he's the leading penalty minute guy for pro hockey. And
really?
Oh yeah. That's the guy that I was just talking to. He's a scout for Boston now. So he's going to come down to one of Dalton's games here in the next couple of weeks. And so you look back. If I look back at the years and the rosters, I could pick 2 or 3 guys on every team and just say how tough they were. Like talk about Luke Crawford. Luke Crawford wasn't a big guy, but he fought anybody that wanted to fight. He didn't have to fight 30 times a year. He had to fight 6 or 8 times a year. But there's a lot of sleepers like that you didn't want to wake them up.
Yeah, wake up the bear, right?
Yeah.
There was a story about McGrattan and Emery. Sorry. There was a story about McGrattan and Emery too, where it said someone asked McGrattan, like, would you beat Emery in a fight? And he said, on the ice, 100%, but off the ice, probably not. Like he said, Emery was just a machine. Yeah,
he was pretty crazy. Like I say, he took boxing stuff, and he was ripped, and he was crazy.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I wouldn't want to fool around with him. It's just had it in his blood.
Yeah. Now, Steve, what about a couple skill guys you played with? Like, are there any like just nasty guys that just stick out, or one or two? I'm sure there's tons, but I mean, 1 or 2 that stick out above the rest for you?
Well, you look back, like say, look at Spezza. Like there's even that team alone, Spezza, and then there was Antoine Vermette.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to go back here, like because there was always skilled guys. Just lack of memory and too many concussions unless I get a roster sheet in front of me.
Did you play with Peter Sikora, didn't you?
Yeah, for a bit. Like I say, there's guys that aren't household names. Tony Herkus, played with him in Indianapolis, and he was a Hobie Baker winner. It was just crazy. Whether he was still what record he would have at the time, but he was like the best player in college hockey, and come there and just have thugs chasing him everywhere. This wasn't his type of game, but skill wise, you'd have to let me do some homework to go through the skill guys. I seem to remember the tough guys more so.
Tough guys give better stories though, so that's fine. We're good with that. We've had a lot of stories tonight. Well, we appreciate you coming on. It's been a blast hearing all these stories and bringing up all these names, and it's been a pleasure. You got anything else, Flem?
So how proud of your career, Steve? I mean, you started out in a small town, Madoc, right? You got to play for your pretty much hometown in the OHL, drafted by the Leafs, got some NHL time. When you look back now, are you happy with your career, and what are some of your thoughts on it?
Well, obviously, everybody would want to say you played 1,000 games in the NHL. Well, it didn't pan out, and I say to people, and when you're growing up, you say you want to be a hockey player, you want to play in the NHL. So I got to play a little bit in the NHL, so I guess I can be happy with that. Got to live the dream of playing hockey till I was 36 years old. So I met a lot of amazing people, and to think back, can you say there's regrets? Yeah, I would have done this, I would have done that, but at the end of it, I played, I don't know, close to 1,100 games pro, and lived to tell about it, I guess. So it's something that somebody had asked me about that earlier, and I'd said, well, you know what, I wanted to be a hockey player. So I was a hockey player for 16 years pro and 3 years junior, and all before that. So when I was old enough to play old timers hockey, that's when I retired.
Yeah. And one thing that sticks out, and you've mentioned this a few times during tonight, was the amount of relationships that you have, and you still talk to guys, and sometimes that's part of you got to be able to do that, right? And you say you can go to the rink almost any, let's say, junior game or whatever, and you'll have somebody there that you know. So I think that in itself is a major accomplishment too, to be able to do what you did. So the NHL is awesome, and you got a little bit of experience. Always probably nice to have more, but I still think that's a massive accomplishment for what you did, and obviously a Calder Cup to go with it too, right?
Yeah, it's nice. They say I should have done I should have had the computer in front of the bar over here with a few jerseys and some pictures and stuff. But it's at least I got some stories to tell once in a while. I said my son doesn't want to listen to them, so
he's probably heard them too many times, eh? But
yeah.
Best of luck to him too. If when you talk with him, tell him I said hi. We played a little bit of ball hockey this year, and he definitely learned how to play the game a little bit. So, and he's one hell of a talent. I think he broke some records last year in Trenton, did he not?
Yeah, he ended up tied. I think he tied for the Trenton record for most points. Come down to the last weekend, and they played one of the crappiest teams, Lindsay, and they got shut out. So he needed 2 points. Yeah, needed 2 points the last game, and had a goal and assist, and got a goal or assist first period. Then I got a goal second period, and I said, okay. He'd tied the guy with for the scoring lead, and he had more goals. So I thought, he just wins automatically with more goals, right? And so I said, it's time for me to get a beer now. Didn't realize that they shared the scoring championship. It didn't matter that you had more goals. So I would have been. So it is what it is. But yeah, it was nice. He had a good run in Trenton, and unfortunately didn't go far in the playoffs. But he was there for three full years, lost a year during COVID, which kind of sucked. I think if they played their COVID year, I would think he would have got committed a year before, but it all worked out for him. He's having a blast down at Cornell.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure you guys definitely probably enjoy going down there too, right? I'm sure there might be the odd bar and whatnot to hit up.
Yeah, it's only 4 hours door to door. So we went down a couple weeks ago, and we had 15 of us down there for the one game. So he's having fun. Obviously, he's got schoolwork to do, but the hockey's it's like a job, right? So.
And what are the fans like down there? They get good crowds, or?
Actually, it's a smaller rink, but for the most part, they sell out, and it's one of the purest atmospheres to watch hockey. The band's going. They've got all these different chants for different teams, and every time somebody scores a goal, they do a certain thing and chant everybody's name. So it's something to go down and see. I never really experienced it before. I'd seen some college hockey, but it's a great spot to watch a hockey game.
Yeah, I took my AAA team down to Boston, to BU and Boston College, and it's unreal. Like compared to what you see now or up here, I guess, because a lot of fans up here seem to be a little older, so they don't quite get into it. Or the students, they, like you said, they're chanting, they're chirping the goalie the whole time, and
they don't even.
It's definitely a ton of fun.
There. the students there don't show up till 5 minutes into the game. You're like, the rink's half full, and then 5 minutes later, everybody rolls in doing their drinking outside, I guess, because you can't drink inside. So
They're catching their buzz before, aren't they?
yeah,
But that's awesome. Thanks a lot for coming on today. We really appreciate it. And I know you sponsored one of our golf holes last year, so we want to say thanks for that for Pay It Forward Sports. I don't know if you're around this summer, but July 8th, we do have a celebrity golf tournament again. So if you are available, we'd love to have you come on out. It's a heck of a day. Just thought I'd throw that out there, but no worry. You can let us know about that later, but appreciate you coming on here today. Some awesome stories for sure.
well, thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot, Steve. We appreciate it, buddy. Take care. Cheers.
All right, guys, take care.
Take care. Have a good night. Okay, guys, welcome back. Hopefully you enjoyed that interview with Steve Bancroft. I know we sure did. It was really unbelievable. Maybe one thing we'll have to do for the future is get his son Dalton, who's a Trenton Golden Hawk for 3 or 4 years there. Like we said, scoring leader. He's playing down in the States on a Division One. For his first of 4 years down there. Maybe we'll get him on sometime, Fleming. And I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I just saw he was like 3rd star of the week or something again down there. So he's doing really well. Just as a note, I want to ask you a question there. If you played for an OHL team 20 years ago, let's say, well, you didn't play, but let's say 20 years ago you tried out for an OHL team and you didn't ever play any minutes, would you go to that OHL team and sign autographs as an OHLer, 20 years later to these kids when you don't even have one OHL minute?
Well,
I just have a question. Would you do something like that? Because to me, it's like,
am I on the hockey DB or elite prospects? Like, did I make the roster?
No.
Then no way. Why would you ever go do that? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. What are you talking about? Where are you going with this?
Like somebody, it's just random. Somebody else might get the inside joke with this, but like I played. So what did I play? A handful of games, 6 or 7 games, maybe, I don't know, in the FHL. And if that team ever came back to me, he's like, hey, Jeff, do you want to come down for a weekend and sign autographs? I would be like, no. Like, I played like a handful of games. And at least I played games, and at least I'm on Hockey DB. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I would never do that because I'd be like, what the hell am I doing here? And that was about 8 or 9 years ago. We're talking 20 years ago, and we're still trying to find the stats for this individual. But if anybody's listening and you understand the Morse code we're putting out there, yes. Yeah. Anyways, one question for you. Oh, before we go, guys, we have an unreal interview coming up next week. Oh, my God. Hold your bananas. This is going to be unreal. We're talking
swinging, baby.
We're talking swinging for the fences, and he's from a town that starts with an S and ends with a Y. So an S and ends with a G, right, Fleming? Anyways, we won't say his name yet, but it's going to be a ton of fun, guys. So stay tuned to the Boo Club Sports on the Pay It Forward Sports Network. Get on our bus trips. There's only as limited spots available. March 18th and April 1st. Sens vs. Leafs. Awesome Battle of Ontario, of course, to go along with the show. And last but not least, 4-on-4. Kings of 4-on-4 provincial championships. You want to be the champion of Ontario? We got a tournament in Ottawa. And, of course, now we've launched a tournament in our local town, or local area, I should say, in Quinte West. It's going to be in Trenton, guys. So winning team wins a trip to Vegas, 2 secondary trips to Vegas for 2 people, another trip to Dominican Republic for 2 people, $500 cash, team tickets to either the Sens or the Toronto Blue Jays, and much, much more. This is going to be the tournament of the year for Pay It Forward Sports Hockey.
Let's go, buddy. I can't wait for these. The 4-on-4 is my favorite event of the year. I just love it. I think there's so much more skill involved in the 5-on-5. It really kind of, especially for rec hockey, but I mean, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it next week. One of the biggest interviews we've ever done. But, Broeky, let's wrap it up. Let's give one more thanks to Steve Bancroft from Century 21, real estate agent in Madoc. Great stories from Bangor. And, yeah, we'll get Dalton on one day. But, Jeff Brokema, are you in, buddy?
Broeky. And I'm in the Boo Club.